Before Bison, before Akuma, before any of the villains you're picturing right now, Street Fighter had one antagonist, one final boss standing at the top of the mountain in 1987, daring anyone to take him down. Today, I'm breaking down every single villain in the Street Fighter franchise and everything that makes them terrifying. Starting with the original, Sagat. The Emperor of Muay Thai wasn't just the first villain in Street Fighter, he was the villain. The final boss of the original 1987 arcade game, the guy standing between you and victory before M. Bison even existed. And his backstory is way darker than most people realize. Sagat earned his title by defeating a fighter named Nua Khan in combat, cementing himself as the undisputed king of Muay Thai. But that reign came at a cost. During a title defense, a fighter named Go Hibiki gouged out Sagat's eye, literally ripped it out during the match. Sagat killed him for it, but the damage was done. Here's where it gets wild. The Tiger Shot, one of the most iconic projectile moves in fighting game history, wasn't something Sagat trained for years to master. It erupted out of him in a moment of pure anguish after losing his eye. One of the most recognizable attacks in all of gaming was essentially screamed into existence by raw suffering. That's not a technique. That's trauma given a hitbox. But the wound that truly defined him came later. During his tournament fight against Ryu, a desperate Shoryuken ripped a permanent scar across his chest. That scar became Sagat's obsession. Not shame, obsession. The one loss he could never accept. That obsession drove him straight into Shadaloo, where he became one of M. Bison's 4 heavenly kings. The Emperor of Muay Thai, reduced to a dictator's personal bodyguard. But his Street Fighter V arc finally broke the cycle. Sagat briefly tapped into the Satsui no Hado and felt its pull, but he resisted it through sheer inner resolve and self-understanding, completing a full redemption from rage-driven villain to honorable warrior. Fans consistently call it the best character arc in the entire franchise, and honestly, it's hard to argue. But Sagat was only the beginning, because the villain who recruited him makes Sagat look like a warm-up round M. Bison. If Street Fighter has a center of gravity, it's this man. Almost every villain on this list connects back to him in some way. M. Bison is the axis the entire franchise rotates around, and he has been since 1991 when he showed up as the non-playable final boss of Street Fighter II, and immediately became the face of fighting game villainy. And honestly, he earned it. Bison runs Shadaloo, a criminal empire that deals in drug trafficking, arms dealing, terrorism, and illegal human experimentation. This is not a subtle organization. This is a global syndicate built on suffering, and Bison sits at the top of it, powered by something called Psycho Power. Think of it as the dark mirror of soul power, except it's fueled entirely by fear, anger, and hatred. It's literally weaponized misery. The worse the world gets, the stronger he becomes. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. You can't actually kill him, not permanently. Bison has died and come back at least twice by transferring his consciousness into freshly grown replacement bodies. That's not a desperate survival tactic. That's his standard contingency plan. He builds spare bodies the way normal people keep extra batteries in a drawer. In Street Fighter V, Ryu finally puts him down for real. His body is disintegrated. Done. Finished. Except Street Fighter VI director Takayuki Nakayama confirmed that Bison is back in that exact same cracked, broken body from his defeat. No new clone, no fresh vessel. He's walking around in what looks like it lost a fight with a demolition crew, and he can't remember his own name. Complete amnesia. The most dangerous man the world has ever faced is just wandering around with zero memory of who he is, and the community is completely split on this. Some fans believe the amnesia is genuine, that this is real character transformation happening in real time. Others are convinced he's faking every second of it, quietly rebuilding power while nobody sees him coming. Both sides have compelling arguments, and Capcom isn't saying a word either way. But whether Bison remembers himself or not, there's one fighter who never needed a criminal empire to be terrifying: Akuma. Most villains in Street Fighter want something tangible: world domination, revenge, money, power over others. Akuma wants none of that. He wants one thing: a fight worth having. And that single desire has turned him into the most terrifying character in the entire franchise. Known in Japan as Guki, meaning Great Demon, Akuma first appeared as a hidden final boss in Super Street Fighter II Turbo in 1994. And hidden is the key word here. You couldn't just reach him through normal gameplay. Discovering him felt like finding a secret the game was actively trying to keep from you. That introduction set the tone for everything Akuma would become, something lurking beneath the surface, more dangerous than anything you were prepared for. Here's his backstory. Akuma is Guken's younger brother. both trained under their master Gutetsu in the same martial arts discipline. But where Guken rejected the Satsui no Hado, the killing intent woven into their fighting style, Akuma embraced it completely. He challenged Gutetsu to a fight to the death specifically to prove the Satsui no Hado's supremacy. He won, killed his own master, and never looked back. But here's where it gets dark. The full embrace of the Satsui no Hado didn't just make Akuma stronger, it burned away his humanity entirely. He describes himself as a denizen of hell and evil incarnate. And based on everything we see in the lore, that's not dramatic posturing. That's a factual description. And the proof? He killed M. Bison, the main villain of the entire franchise. During Street Fighter Alpha, Akuma hit Bison with the Shun Goku Satsu, the Raging Demon, and Bison reportedly suffered horribly before dying. Let that sink in. The guy every other character struggles against across multiple games got erased like a warm-up round. Beyond his base form, Akuma can push into Shin Akuma through deeper mastery of the Satsui no Hado and even further into Oni, a form where the dark energy completely consumes him. Each transformation strips away whatever humanity might still be flickering inside. Oni isn't even really Akuma anymore. It's the Satsui no Hado wearing his body, and that's his tragedy. Akuma's entire existence revolves around finding one opponent strong enough to give him a real fight. But his own power has made him so overwhelmingly dominant that almost nobody qualifies. He's not conquering nations or building criminal empires. He's wandering the earth in complete existential isolation, searching for a battle that may never come. The strongest villain in Street Fighter is also the loneliest. But if Akuma represents raw, unmatched power, the next villain on this list believes he's something far beyond power. He believes he's a god. Gil M. Bison built a criminal empire over a couple of decades and thought he was running the world. Gil's organization has been pulling strings for over 2,000 years. Shadaloo is a blip on the secret society's timeline, a footnote, and the man leading it makes Bison look like middle management. Gil debuted as the main antagonist of Street Fighter III: New Generation in February 1997, and he arrived looking like absolutely nothing the series had ever produced. Half his body burns with fire, the other half is frozen solid in ice. Pyrokinesis and cryokinesis operating in perfect balance simultaneously in one person. And that visual isn't just for show, it's his entire philosophy made flesh. Gil genuinely believes that true salvation requires equal parts creation and destruction, and his body is the living proof of that conviction. Here's the thing about Gil. He's not some power-hungry warlord who clawed his way to the top. He was appointed president of the secret society at age 22, based on an ancient prophecy that declared him the reincarnated emperor. His entire identity is built on the belief that he was cosmically chosen to shepherd humanity through the apocalypse. And unlike most delusional villains, he actually has the power to back it up. How do we know? Because Akuma hit him with the Shun Goku Satsu, the same move that killed M. Bison, the attack that destroys the soul itself. Akuma landed it, watched Gil drop, and walked away satisfied. And then Gil simply resurrected himself, just stood back up. That single moment recalibrates the entire threat scale of the franchise. The move that ended Bison is an inconvenience to Gil, but his power isn't just personal. He runs the G Project, a genetic enhancement program designed to produce super soldiers. Characters like Necro and 12 are direct products of this initiative. Gil isn't just strong, he's building infrastructure for apocalyptic ambition, an army of engineered weapons backed by 2,000 years of institutional knowledge. And there's one more layer that the community won't stop debating. Some fans believe Gil may be hosting an ancient entity separate from his own consciousness. His dismissive interactions with G and his connections to other characters suspected of possession have fueled this theory for years. Nothing is confirmed canonically, but the breadcrumbs are there if you're looking. A cosmic emperor with resurrection powers, and a shadow government older than most civilizations. That's Gil. But if you think a self-proclaimed god is strange, wait until you meet the villain who's literally a copy of everyone else. Seth is what happens when a backup plan develops feelings. And honestly, that's the funniest tragedy in the entire Street Fighter franchise. Here's the setup. M. Bison, ever the forward thinker, commissioned at least 26 genetically engineered replacement bodies, spare vessels he could transfer his consciousness into whenever his current body got destroyed. Think of it like saving your game across 26 different memory cards. Seth is number 15, just another empty shell waiting in line, except Seth woke up. He developed self-awareness, looked around, realized he was a disposable meat suit for a dictator, and said absolutely not. So he did what any newly conscious being with zero life experience would do. He gave himself a massive ego and started a weapons corporation. As CEO of SIN, Shadaloo's weapons division, Seth positioned himself as a legitimate threat, and his toolkit was genuinely terrifying. The Tandon engine, a mechanical device embedded directly in his abdomen, could artificially generate and harness ki. But here's where it gets interesting. The engine also let him copy and absorb fighting techniques from anyone he defeated. Sonic booms, shoryukens, yoga powers. He collected moves like trading cards. He was essentially a walking firmware update, patching himself with everyone else's best abilities. But here's the thing about copying everyone. You become nobody. Seth's entire existence is defined by this contradiction. He's an artificial being who steals techniques from real fighters, yet he's consumed by the desperate need to prove he's unique. He has the ego of a god and the identity of a photocopier. He screams about his superiority while literally being made from someone else's blueprint. And then Juri Han showed up and stomped directly on his Tandon engine. That's it. That's how a main series villain goes out. Not in some epic final clash, but getting his power source crushed underfoot like a soda can. It gets worse. In Street Fighter V, Seth returns in a female-presenting body, and the consciousness transfer went badly. He's suffering severe psychosis, glitching between identities, and hunting M. Bison with obsessive fury, except he can't even find the right target. He mistakes Falk and Ed for Bison simply because they carry traces of psycho power. He's swinging at shadows of the man who built him. That's Seth's real story, not a villain. A defective product having an existential crisis, copying everyone around him while insisting he's one of a kind. The most human emotions imaginable trapped inside the least human body ever made. But if you think Seth had it rough, wait until you meet the woman who ended him, because Juri Han's story makes his look like a minor inconvenience. Juri Han is the dark mirror image of Chun-Li. Her creator said that explicitly, and once you hear it, you can't unsee it. Both women lost their families to M's Bison. Both dedicated their entire lives to destroying Shadaloo. But where Chun-Li channeled that grief into justice, Juri channeled it into pure, unfiltered sadism. And that difference is what makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters Street Fighter has ever produced. She first appeared in Super Street Fighter IV in 2010 as a South Korean taekwondo fighter, and her backstory is specifically brutal. Shadaloo attacked her family's car in direct retaliation for her father's prosecution of the organization. Her parents were killed. Her father was taken prisoner, and when the government refused to pay the ransom, Bison had him murdered on camera. Let that sink in. She watched it happen. After that, Juri lost vision in her left eye from the attack and ended up at a SIN laboratory, where she underwent surgery to have the Feng Shui engine implanted directly into the damaged socket. It was a miniaturized version of Seth's Tandon engine, giving her supernatural ki amplification at the cost of her natural vision. She traded part of herself for power, and she did it willingly. But here's where it gets interesting. Juri didn't join SIN because she was recruited or manipulated. She joined deliberately, positioning herself as a pawn while secretly engineering conflict between Seth and Bison, playing both sides against each other for her own ends. That is not the behavior of a simple thug. That's a chess player wearing a mask. In Street Fighter V's A Shadow Falls, Bison ripped the Feng Shui engine straight out of her eye and left her for dead. Most people would stop there. Juri tracked down the Feng Shui engine alpha, installed it herself, and kept going. That tells you everything you need to know about her willpower. But her defining tragedy isn't the violence done to her, it's what happened after. When Shadaloo finally fell and Bison appeared dead, Juri got exactly what she wanted. Total revenge. Complete destruction of the organization that ruined her life, and she felt nothing. Her vendetta had been the only thing giving her life structure, purpose, identity. Without it, she had nothing to become. No justice to pursue, no healing to chase. Just an empty room where a person used to be. That's the difference between her and Chun-Li, distilled to its core. Chun-Li fought for something beyond revenge. Juri didn't. And when the revenge was gone, so was she. But if you think Juri's identity crisis is unsettling, wait until you meet someone whose entire identity might be a lie constructed on a cosmic scale. GG is either the most dangerous being in the entire Street Fighter universe, or he's just some guy with a top hat and a dream. The game absolutely refuses to tell you which one it is. He appeared in Street Fighter V with zero origin story, zero affiliation, and zero explanation. Just showed up one day, started calling himself the President of Earth, and began manipulating lava with his bare hands. He can transform into a full gold form. He claims to have mastered every martial art on the planet, regardless of how obscure. And he delivers all of this with the energy of a motivational speaker at a county fair. On the surface, he's almost comedic. A self-appointed world leader live streaming his campaign to unite humanity. Easy to dismiss. Funny hat, big personality, zero credentials. Cool. But then Rose fought him. Rose is the single most credible psychic in the entire franchise. She's the one who sensed Bison's evil before anyone else. She purged soul power corruption from the world and genuinely believed the threat was over. Then she encountered G and immediately experienced a vision of catastrophic apocalypse. A giant glacier falling into the ocean, total extinction level imagery, and she had absolutely no explanation for it. That's the moment G stops being funny. The series' most trusted oracle just looked at this man and saw the end of the world. Here's where it gets weirder. G met directly with Jill on a public live stream, not in secret, not through intermediaries. He sat down with the leader of a 2,000-year-old secret society and casually discussed the Gate of Harmony and his plans to unite Earth's people. The familiarity between them was immediate. Gil didn't dismiss him, didn't question his authority. They spoke like two beings who had known each other for far longer than any mortal timeline would allow. G also appears as a secret mini-boss in Street Fighter V's arcade mode. That's not an accident. Developers don't hide characters in boss slots unless they mean something. It's a deliberate signal that beneath the showmanship, there's something the game wants you to take seriously. And then there's his language. G refers to himself as a savior. That exact word, the same word Gil uses. The same messianic framing, the same apocalyptic undertones, the same conviction that humanity needs to be guided towards some grand unification. The overlap is too precise to be coincidence, and it's fueled theories that they share a connected agenda, a shared consciousness, or are both vessels for something far older than either of them. His true identity remains completely unresolved. Fan theories range from elemental deity to time-displaced entity to ancient possessing force wearing a human suit, and honestly, the ambiguity seems intentional. Capcom built a character who sits perfectly on the line between absurd and terrifying, and they've refused to push him to either side. That's not a gap in the writing. That's the design. Nobody knows what G actually is. And that might be exactly why he's the scariest villain on this list. But if G operates in mystery and spectacle, the next villain on this list proves you don't need cosmic powers to be truly dangerous. You just need money, patience, and zero conscience. JP. Every villain on this list wanted to rule the world. JP already runs part of it. He debuted as the primary antagonist of Street Fighter VI, and from the moment he appeared, something felt different. No lava powers, no resurrection techniques, no glowing eyes or floating above the battlefield. Just a well-dressed man with a cane, a cat named Seabell, and enough financial infrastructure to make an entire country depend on him. Here's the thing about JP. He was M, Bison's financial officer within Shadaloo. Not a general, not an enforcer, the money guy. And he was one of the few people in that entire organization to receive a direct psycho-power transmission before it all collapsed. So when Shadaloo fell, JP didn't scramble. He pivoted. He took everything he learned about funding a global criminal empire and applied it to something smarter. Legitimacy. He leads Amnesia, an international terrorist organization disguised as hacktivists. But that's the side business. His real cover is an international NGO, credited with Naishal's technological modernization and economic transformation. He built hospitals. He brought infrastructure. He turned a struggling nation into a prosperous one. And that's not a front. The progress is real. The growth is measurable. The people of Naishal genuinely owe their quality of life to this man. And that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Because while he's being celebrated as a visionary, he's also framing Ken Masters as a terrorist and kidnapping Ken's son Mel as leverage. He uses multiple business aliases, all starting with the initials JP, to maintain his legitimate image across different sectors. He hosts the Suval Hall tournament in Naishal like a benevolent patron of the arts. Every move is calculated years in advance, and every public action reinforces the idea that he's a force for good. But here's where it gets dark. JP is so untouchable that Bosch's only option was a suicide bombing. Bosch planted a bomb at the Suvalhall tournament intended to assassinate JP directly, sacrificing himself in the process. It wasn't dramatic. There was no final battle, no grand showdown, just a desperate man who saw no other way to stop someone operating so far above conventional reach. And that's entirely consistent with how JP operates. He doesn't fight you. He arranges circumstances where fighting is already too late. And even when someone is willing to die to stop him, it's not enough. The community debate around JP is genuinely fascinating. Some fans argue he doesn't belong in the same conversation as Bison or Gil because his threat model is completely different. Previous antagonists sought supernatural domination. They wanted to reshape reality, achieve godhood, or burn the world down and rebuild it. JP wants none of that. His weapons are leverage, patience, and compound interest. Where Bison destroyed nations, JP develops them. Where Gil promises paradise through apocalypse, JP delivers economic growth through corruption. And that framing raises a question the series has never really asked before. What's scarier? A man who can destroy a planet, or a man who builds hospitals with laundered money and makes an entire country love him for it? A dictator who rules through fear is easy to identify. A philanthropist who rules through dependency is almost impossible to remove. JP might be the most realistic villain Street Fighter has ever produced. Not because he's the strongest, not because he's the most powerful, but because his version of evil doesn't look like evil at all. It looks like progress. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every ninja in Mortal Kombat explained and ranked, click the video on the screen now.